What's up, guys? Welcome into Packers Total Access. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on Packernet.com. Find me on Twitter at Packers_access. Joined alongside Jacob in Wisconsin, here to talk some Green Bay Packers on this glorious Sunday, May the 25th. Hopefully everybody's having an awesome weekend. Jacob, how you doing, bub?
Well, I'm doing well. As we talked about pre-recording, I am quite teetering on a food coma. It sounds like you are in the same boat. And you know what? That's what this weekend is for. Like Blake B says, Happy Memorial Day. Vets, Thank you for your service. Yeah, it's about remembering the fallen and eating some darn good food, which I did. So how are you?
I'm doing great, man. It's funny that's always a topic that crosses my mind. Like Memorial Day weekend is like, we say Happy Memorial Day, and it's this weird, somber, kind of sad time as well. You know what I mean? As a person who did not serve in the military, I always feel awkward, like I don't know how to. And like my brother told me, who was a veteran, and he would get frustrated when people say Happy Memorial Day to him and thank him for his service. Like you don't understand what Memorial Day is about, and he would lay it out for him, right?
No.
However, like he said, I have a hard time believing those men and women would have sacrificed their life, wanted us to just sit around and be sad. They did it so we could live free and live a happy, prosperous life. And I was like, that's a good way of putting it. It's still awkward for me, but obviously special shout out and thank you to everyone, all the men and women out there who continue to serve our country. I know it's not what Memorial Day is about, but you cut from the same cloth of those that, laid down the ultimate sacrifice. And it's hard not to get emotional to think that someone will be willing to do that for me and this silly little daily life that I live, talking football and, landscaping and this and that. But it's like, man, it's just awesome.
Other than your brother, do you have a specific veteran you want to shout out? For me, when this comes around, I think of my Uncle Dan, passed away three years ago now. He was a Green Beret tunnel rat in Nam. The dude told me, some of the stories that I used to hear with him, me and my cousin Tyler, he would sit with us in deer hunting and he didn't talk about anything, but for whatever reason, he felt comfortable with me and my cousin Tyler. And man, some of the stories I heard, I can't even imagine how the guy strapped up his boots every day. Right. Like I don't, it's way better man than I'll ever be. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. My grandfather served in World War II. We go way back on the Bailey side of my family. We got a bunch of the men in our family that served in the Revolutionary War that ended up, that's kind of what took them down into the Kentucky area, was they were gifted lots of land down there for serving, in the military there in the Revolution. And but yeah, my grandfather on my mother's side served in World War II. Did not pass away, while serving, but he was on a Pacific island in World War II. He was an aircraft mechanic and actually, flew on some bomber crafts and things like that. But my uncle, we knew him as Uncle Junior, which was Herschel Taylor Jr. He served in the Vietnam War as well. However, he had a different kind of PTSD, and we'll move on. I promise, guys. It's just, I'm glad they brought it up in the chat. It's important to talk about this type of stuff. But he had a form of PTSD that was more guilt related. Jacob, he got drafted to Vietnam, and then when he got to Vietnam, they didn't see him as physically able because of a disability to actually go onto the front line. So he was in the office. He was doing desk work, and he lived his entire life with like this crazy amount of just sorrow, I guess. What's the right word? Guilt, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
That he knew so many men sacrificed their life out there, and here he was behind a desk. So that was interesting to see what he went through growing up. And then of course my brother serving in the Gulf War and all that. So anyway, there's never an easy way to transition from something like that because it's way more important than us talking football. But you guys are here to listen about football, and shout out to your family there too, Jacob, and everybody else who obviously served our awesome military. So you can be, and I want to be very clear on this too, you can be anti-war but pro-warrior, and that's kind of what I consider myself.
Absolutely.
So that makes sense. But all right, let's get into a little Packers talk, man. You had mentioned the other night about some fantasy talk, Jacob, and we're not talking about the Office fantasy talk either. We're talking about we're talking about fantasy football a little bit. We're going to spend just a few minutes on this. And listen, I understand there's a lot of people that don't play fantasy. I personally don't play fantasy football.
That shocks me that you don't, to be honest. It really does.
But I think it is cool. I get asked that all the time. Hey, man, you want to join our league? I'm like, it's not for me. But I think it's cool to kind of see how that realm kind of coincides with the X's and O's, the football aspect that I really dive into. And sometimes I think you can gain a lot of really valuable knowledge from that type of stuff. But anyway, go ahead, man. What did you have? Did anything come to mind in terms of, the upcoming fantasy football season?
Yeah, and I mean, fantasy football to me, if you guys are OGs, me and that's actually how I got kind of my start with the podcast. We actually had a fantasy football podcast for a year. It was me, Tony, Paul, and Justin, which Justin still works with the podcast in certain ways. He gives Clayton a lot of good graphics here and there, and
Justin was awesome. I love Justin.
Very, very appreciative of that. So anyways, so fantasy football, and if you haven't played fantasy football, like Clayton said, it's a great way to enjoy the game a little more. I say, like, it makes watching, as a Packer fan, I absolutely am dialed in to you guys know, every single game, means a little bit more when you got a little money on the edge, or if you got something, just bragging rights over your buddy. So I enjoy it so much that if you guys have not indulged with it, reach out to Clayton or myself, and I'll kind of put you in the right direction. I believe Carly is going to do another fantasy football league this year. I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I think she enjoyed it last year. So
she did a great job with that too, man. That was awesome. Yeah, that was fun to kind of watch from the sidelines.
Yeah, dude, Blake B was there. He said the old fantasy podcasts were fun with Jacob when that one Vikings fan that's getting after it. That's bad luck, Paul. Paul was our resident Viking fan that we pooped all over. It was great. So anyways, let's get into it. The fantasy football tiers this year are a little bit interesting, especially if you're a Packers fan. And when you're in the fantasy football realm, if you're like me, you kind of get homer mentality and you want to draft your guys kind of thing. It makes, like I said, watching the games a little bit more enjoyable. The funny thing, though, about the Packers, especially for the last, number of years, is that they have no standout guy. The one thing I took away from this exercise here was that other than Josh Jacobs, which we'll just dive right into it, Josh Jacobs was our highest ranked fantasy football athlete that we have for the Packers. He's ranked 19th overall, and this is according to Fantasy Pros, which you guys, if you haven't seen Fantasy Pros, that's the website you want to go to. It breaks it down very, very well. They have him ranked 19th overall. He's stuck in between guys like Drake London and Bucky Irvin. He has a 4 out of 5 strength of schedule rank, which means that this is a great schedule for Josh Jacobs if you want to draft somebody like that. And I think the Packers are going to direct their offense to absolutely run through Josh Jacobs. I just feel like that's what's going to happen. He's drafted as the 8th overall running back, which I think is even a little bit shorten him a little bit of his due credit there. He's drafted in the 2nd or 3rd round, depending on if you have an 8 or a 12-man team. Jordan Love is interesting because he's in the tier 3 of quarterbacks. He's ranked number 15 of the quarterbacks. He's in between Fields and Dak Prescott, which, again, with fantasy football, take it with a grain of salt. That doesn't mean that he's the Dak Prescott and that specifically Justin Fields are the type of quarterback. That just means that Justin Fields runs a lot and he's going to get you more fantasy points than the typical, quarterback would. He's being drafted 102nd overall. That's somewhere between rounds 7 and 10. But the problem is with him is, according to the experts, they give him a 2 out of 5 ranking for strength of schedule, meaning they think he's going to have a real rough go at it this year. That's going to coincide with the wide receivers, which is why they absolutely fell down what's interesting, besides Jacobs and Jordan, the next ranked highest offensive player we have is Jayden Reed. He's 97th overall, but he's wide receiver 45, which is kind of crazy. Our number one quote unquote wide receiver is wide receiver 45. He's sandwiched in between Juwan Jennings and Caleb Williams, which is kind of interesting when you look at that as far as what they expect from their production. He also has a 2 of 5 strength of schedule ranking. What's really crazy, though, to me is that I told you Jordan Love was at 102 ranked overall. Guess who's number 103? Tucker Kraft, baby.
Oh, let's go.
Tuck Norris is coming in at 103. He is the overall 11th tight end, which, again, I don't think they're giving him enough love. He's sandwiched in between Jordan Love and Ricky Pearsall. He's a 2 out of 5 strength of schedule, which, again, means that they don't expect him, to have a great advantage or whatever. But I still think that's amazing. Golden, Mr. Matthew Golden, is 130th overall. He's wide receiver 53. Granted, that's a tier 8. He's, again, scheduled the 2 out of 5 as far as strength of schedule. Dobbs is 150th overall. So this is where I was going to kind of make my point. If you want to have your Packers guys kind of pepper through your team, it's a great year to do it, because Romeo Dobbs, who I would argue is still our number one. I know we did that exercise the other day as far as what his stats come out to. I just feel like for whatever reason that the ball is going to go through Romeo in the first part of this season, just until maybe Savion or Golden or even, Reed kind of get their feet wet. And then Marshawn Lloyd was 165th overall, running back 54. And that kind of surprised me because we obviously haven't seen a lot from him, but I really do think that they're going to try to get him involved. And as much as I love our other running backs, it's a tough backfield to try to understand, other than Josh Jacobs, obviously, who's going to get the ball, because I could see them going through Chris Brooks. They obviously love, who else am I thinking of, Clay? Running back 3.
Running back wise, yeah, you got Emmanuel Wilson, right?
Emmanuel Wilson, thank you. So it's to me, it'd be tough for him to crack through the depth chart like that. But you watch the USC clips of Lloyd, and it makes you understand as to why people are projecting him in a fantasy league, because they're like, if this guy actually gets these touches, and if he spells Jacobs in a way, it's a fun group to look at. And as always, like I said, most years the Packers wide receivers, other than Devontae Adams, have just been falling by the wayside. So what I would suggest for you is, if you are in a fantasy league, save your last 3 picks, get yourself either Dontavian Wicks, get yourself Luke Musgrave, and then get yourself maybe like a Savion or a Michael. I mean, Golden's, like I said, going pretty high just because he's the number 1 draft pick, but nobody's drafting Savion. Nobody is. So that's
really interesting there, because, they may be able to pop him into the backfield and get some really, really easy fantasy points there. Obviously, Matt LaFleur and Adam Stenavich are not thinking about that at all. But it just feels like if you want to get Savion on the field, sooner rather than later, you could probably throw him into the backfield in that pony package and let him kind of eat up some carries that way, take a little bit of the load off of some of the running backs, and also create a little bit of a mismatch if you want to start him in the pony package and then cheat motion him out wide. So very interesting. And what you said about Romeo Dobbs, Jacob, it depends on what you mean by number 1 receiver. There's no doubt about it that if he hadn't got hurt last year, he would have led the team in targets. There's no 2 ways about it. That tells me that Matt LaFleur sees him at least as an equal number 1 to everyone else on the team. So if that's your definition of, hey, look, he's the number 1 receiver, meaning he's going to get the majority of the share of the targets, that was proven last year. There's no doubt about it. And when I look at a number 1 receiver, I think of who is the best receiver on the team, right? When someone says, is he a true number 1 receiver? That's when I go, okay, there's only a handful of true number 1 receivers in the league where coverages actually roll to those guys and they're dictating what the defense does, type thing. So it just depends on how people look at that term, number 1 receiver, if that makes sense. So that's good stuff though, man. I'm eager to see what Jordan does healthy now, because, would you say he was 15th amongst quarterbacks? Is that right?
Yep, that's correct.
I think that's a little low. I really do. I think once you get up into the 12 range, it's like, okay, now you're getting into where I feel like he truly is. 15, I think, is on the low side, and I think it can be as high as 6 or 7.
Yeah, to be fair, that's because I think they, like most projections and ratings, they go off of what have you done for me lately. Jordan Love, obviously with the injuries, he did not run last year, and that's a big deal in fantasy football to have a quarterback that can get you a few more extra yards running. So
a little extra value there this year than with him being healthy, right?
Yep,
100%. Inside information there. So good stuff, man. So there's just a little snippet of fantasy football preview. Appreciate you looking all that stuff up, Jake. And again, it kind of shows you where the fantasy community is looking at the Packers and these specific players. And then also when you go to the Vegas lines, you can kind of look and see, all right, what does Vegas think? And I think both of those pieces of information is very valuable. Really, really good.
Yeah, it is really crazy because Bo Nix, whatever, he's like quarterback 6. Which is, I just didn't expect that. And Baker Mayfield, he's throwing to absolute studs. Like he's got probably the best wide receiver room in the game right now. But it is interesting to see how they tier people.
Yeah, definitely. All right, man. Well, speaking of tiers, let's shift gears and talk a little bit about team rankings. And I wanted to key in on scoring from last year. that sounds good to you guys. Basically, what I wanted to do here was take a look. I'm going to drop the chat down for just a second, guys. Appreciate y'all. Y'all are lighting it up in the chat. Thank y'all for hopping in here and being a part of the show. If you would hit like, hit subscribe, and feel free to share this this podcast with anybody that enjoys Packers talk. So, team rankings, we've talked running, and we're going to do an extensive deep dive into every aspect of the game. What I thought we would key in on tonight is let's just take a quick glance, quick refresher. Where did the Packers finish both on offense and defense in terms of team rankings, scoring-wise? And not just in points per play and points per game, but also how effective were they by quarter, first half, second half, and kind of give us a little bit better idea, okay, where did we struggle last year as a team? So let's go ahead and dive into it. You can find this article. It's already up along with the defensive one over in our Patreon community. If you want to join our Patreon group, it's the best way to support what we do here. $3 get you access to everything over there, and you can get early access to anything that we cover on the show. If it's in article form, we typically have it up over there, as well as Chalk Talks, things like that. Just go to patreon.com/Packer Fan Total Access or scan the QR code in the upper right. There should be links in the video description as well. So, I said below are the Packers' offensive scoring rankings for the 24-25 season. Let's start with my favorite metric, which is offensive points per play. Okay, the Packers finished 8th at a .432. So that's how many points do they score per offensive play ran. That shows you, to me, that's a true efficiency measurement in terms of how well a team is scoring as they're hitting pay dirt here. So that puts them 8th in the league. Jacob, we just talked about how the fantasy community is kind of seeing Jordan Love around the 15 spot. We talked about how the receivers led the league in drops last year.
Yes.
Right? All these things. Jordan Love struggling with the accuracy at times, him battling 3 injuries, all these things that come into play. Yet here we are sitting 8th in points per play at .432. Again, can we put some damn respect on Matt LaFleur's name?
Yeah, and like you said, the caveats there, who knows where we would have ranked had Jordan not. What if Jordan had 2 injuries instead of that? Exactly. You know what I mean? Like, what if this or that would have happened? I really do believe that we have not seen Jordan Love peak yet. I don't think we've seen the Packers offense peak yet. I think that we're kind of sitting here and we are very harsh on our own guys. And I understand that. That's what you have to do. We talk about all the time, see something, say something kind of thing. I get that. It's just that we do need to actually give this team a little bit of, what's the word, grace, and just say, hey, man, last year didn't go exactly like we thought, and we still made some pretty good lemons out of that lemonade, or lemonade out of those lemons. You know what I mean? So, and I am excited, and the off season is, the hopium season, and I got it for sure. You look on paper and damn, our offense looks good, man. Like, you really do look at it down the line, and it seems as if that we are in line to be successful. I would definitely like to see us absolutely grab that. But 8th, after everything that happened last year, being 8th overall in offensive points per play tells you that this team hasn't cracked their potential yet. And you look at the teams in front of us: Detroit, Buffalo, Baltimore, Tampa Bay, Philadelphia, Cincinnati, Washington. What do those all have in common? Well, they made the playoffs, and one of them won the Super Bowl. It's rare air to be in, if I may say.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the quarterbacks too, right? With Detroit, obviously they got a solid running game, but you got Jared Goff. You got Josh Allen, MVP. He won the MVP this year, right? Yeah. So you've got Lamar Jackson, who's won an MVP before. You've got Baker Mayfield, who I remember when they ran him out of Cleveland, I was like, man, I was wrong on Baker. I thought he was the real deal. I mean, if they don't want him, and he bounced around. He went to Carolina. I think he might have went to the LA Rams for a year. I can't remember for sure. And then he ends up in Tampa, and lo and behold, he's the real deal. So it was right all along, man. Baker is a damn good football player.
Yeah.
Now, whether you like the antics or not, I think he's one of those rare occasions where someone is very vocal, very boisterous, and his teammates thrive off of it, as opposed to others sometimes will kind of, it just doesn't.
I would personally, if I was a Tampa Bay fan, I'd love Baker Mayfield.
He's right down my alley, man.
He'd get me. I'd buy a jersey. The dude's, he's my kind of guy.
And then obviously you got Philadelphia Eagles there with Jalen Hurts, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Joe Burrow, who threw for damn near 5,000 yards this past year, if I remember correctly. And, of course, Jaden Daniels, who just lit the league on fire. I'm sorry, man. There's not a Chicago Bear fan on the face of the planet that tells me they're glad they got Caleb Williams over Jaden Daniels. They can lie all they want, but they don't feel like that deep down inside. So, anyway, Green Bay finishing 8th. Denver, you talked about Bo Nix. They actually finished 9th in scoring last year, right behind Green Bay.
Yeah.
And that was with the rookie quarterback in Bo Nix. Of course, even though he's a rookie, he's like 26, 27 years old, right? And then, of course, the Vikings right behind that, and then the Chargers and the Arizona Cardinals. So points per game, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time here. I like points per play over points per game. I feel like that tells a little more of the story. However, the Packers finished in the same spot, and that is 8th in the league in points per game. They have 26.1 points per game. All right. Above them is pretty much the same teams, it looks like, just a little bit shuffled a little bit of direction. Let's just start from the top here. Detroit first in both, Buffalo second in both, Baltimore third in both, Tampa Bay fourth in both, Philadelphia fifth in both. So the top 5 stayed the same. The 6th and the 7th shuffled around. 6th in points per play was Cincinnati. It was Washington in points per game, and then Cincinnati 7th in points per game. And with Washington, Cincinnati was 6th in points per game. And then, of course, you got Green Bay coming in there in the 8th spot. So that's how the points per game shakes out. Now, moving on to red zone efficiency, and this is just touchdowns only, guys. Okay, this isn't just overall points, because once you get in the red zone, you should be able to kick a field goal, right, if you're inside the 20. So here is the red zone. I know you laugh, Jacob, because we've been there, right? We have been there. Offense, NFL team, red zone scoring percentage. This is touchdowns only. I remember in the past where we kind of struggled a little bit in the red zone. And here now you've got the team as a top 10. They sit in the 10 spot, tied for 10th with Philadelphia at 58.33%. So if you go down the line here, it's Baltimore 1, Buffalo 2, Detroit 3, Tampa Bay 4, Cincinnati 5, Washington 6, Chicago 7th in red zone. So they actually performed pretty well again in the red zone last year. And then Carolina Panthers in the 8th spot, Denver Broncos 9, and Green Bay and Philadelphia rounding out the top 10. So I'm pretty pleased with that. I just can't help but think of how many times we ran jet sweeps down there inside the 20. And it's like, man, if we'd have just kind of kept it between the tackles and kept pounding the rock, you feel like you have a little bit better chance of scoring. I remember a couple of times at least last year where it's like, well, we just need a yard to move the sticks. Why are we running?
Why are we going lateral? Yeah, I agree. And you know what? I mean, like you said, there's a number of plays. If we just dictate a few different, decisions, we're probably top 7, top 6, top 5, somewhere in there. And I loved back in the day, was it Rodgers and whoever else? It was the gold zone. It wasn't the red zone. I like gold.
I like gold.
I almost kind of want to bring that back in a way of like, certain things like that emphasis is, hey, we're a type of team that when we're in the 20, we are going to score. And if we don't, we are very disappointed. Like I want it to be as if it's automatic. And if not, like I want that floor to be, we at least get 3. If we don't, like we're absolute failures, like failure. And I want that to be, there you go. Everyone's favorite OC, Mr. Hackett's cold zone. I want that to bring back the standard. I think so. Right. I mean, and a lot of people get him crap because, he went over to wherever. Did he go to the Bears? Where did he go to?
Jets, right?
Jets. That's right. Yeah. And absolutely pooped the bed, but whatever. Certain people are good in certain situations, and then when you throw them out of water and let them, sink or swim, it's not the same dynamic. I like our coaching staff right now. I think that he'd fit it. Isn't he back? Is he back with the team now?
Nathaniel Hackett. I don't believe he is.
Not Hackett. Who else? Who am I thinking of that came back?
We got Luke Getsy back.
Getsy. That's who I was thinking of. Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to see who Nathaniel Hackett's with. It may be the American football coach, offensive coordinator position, the Jaguars. I'd have to look it up. Go ahead, Jake. What were you going to say, man?
I think maybe he's with St. Kate's School for the Blind. I don't know. It is interesting, though, looking at the offensive NFL red zone scoring percentage, touchdowns only, because if you look at Chicago's at 7th. I mean, that kind of surprised me a little bit there. Carolina's at 8th. It's a different type of metric when you get into that red zone there. Hey, coaches in the chat love that. Anders Carlson would beg to differ, he said.
Man, you ain't kidding.
Oh, man.
It's a name I don't want to hear ever again, man. Golly, I've never seen people get so upset over a kicker before in my life, man. It was bad. It got tough out here in these Packer fan streets.
That was a
So,
rough one.
all right,
Yeah.
let's move on to the quarter by quarter scoring. Okay, I really like to dive into these once the season's over, the smoke is settled, because you could get an idea of, okay, where do we struggle? Because typically, if you do good in the first quarter, it means your coach is doing a good job game planning. If you struggle in the second quarter, you're maybe struggling to make an adjustment, right? Third quarter, fourth quarter obviously kind of speaks for itself. And you guys know we always talk about the first quarter. There's three aspects to a game. The first quarter, you're gathering information. The second quarter is all about making an adjustment and controlling the middle eight and going into the third quarter. And then, of course, the fourth quarter is a standalone game. Throw the game plan out the window. What has worked? What hasn't? What are they doing to attack you? You make that adjustment. You do whatever the heck you got to do to win the ball game. So when we go quarter by quarter here, the Green Bay Packers were off to a fast start last year. And if I remember correctly, the year before, they really struggled with that. So they finished third in first quarter points scored, third in the entire National Football League. First was Tampa Bay with 6.7 points on average. Minnesota Vikings were second at 6.1. Then the Green Bay Packers at 6 points per first quarter. Cincinnati was fourth, Washington fifth, Baltimore sixth, Buffalo 7, Tennessee 8, LA Chargers 9, Houston 10. So you'll notice here, the Philadelphia Eagles ended up winning the Super Bowl. They're not even in the top 11 in terms of points they scored in the first quarter. So I'm eager to see where they fall into place here in a second. But Jacob, one thing's for sure, based off of points scored in the first quarter last year, Matt LaFleur got that whole that monkey off his back where he was struggling to get off to a fast start every game. So definitely a positive there.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I remember watching, like Ed said, we seem to need to start fast. I agree with that kind of, because it seems as if that the games that we didn't get that, opening drive, just a little bit of juice, it just took so long. It took so long to grease those wheels, it felt like. And it was painstaking, because obviously the Packers want to come out with a strong start. And I remember years when I can't remember the exact year, but it was like the Packers, I believe, were one of the only teams that scored like on their opening drive. Almost some sort of record type thing. I think it was with Aaron, and it just made the whole flow of the game. Like when you start that drive, you score first, even if it's 3. You know what I mean? Even if it's 3, you just kind of say, okay, all right, I'll take that. And you have a little bit of calmness about yourself, and you go through the game, and you just have – I remember watching the box score, and it did seem like that you'd see that first quarter, second quarter, and the third quarter kind of thing. But when you did see that initial blitz kind of thing, the initial scoring blitz, I should say, in the first quarter, it always seems like it works out a little bit better in our favor. It just seems like it sets that course for being a little more easy there.
Yeah. If we take a quick glance back to the red zone scoring percentage in terms of touchdowns, Packers finishing 10th at a 58.33. They were 5% higher than 2023. So they improved tremendously in red zone touchdowns scored, right? Same thing here. If you look at first quarter, I imagine it would hold true. Yeah, look at this. So we scored 6 points per game in the first quarter this past year, being third best. In 2023, 4.6, which would drop us well out of the top 10, probably outside of the top 15, according to this list we got here that stops at 11. So Matt LaFleur definitely got better at starting fast last year. There's no two ways about it. Moving on to the second quarter is a different story, Jacob, as we finished last season, the 2024 season, 19th, actually tied for 18th, I apologize, with 6.9 points scored per second quarter. And you could see teams scored a lot more points in the second quarter than they did the first quarter across the league in general, right? But if you'll notice from the year before, we still improved. We went from 6 points scored in the second quarter on average in 2023 to 6.9 points scored in 2024. So you're seeing something happen. Some kind of shift occurred in Matt LaFleur's offense. Maybe it was Jordan Love being more comfortable, although I think we would agree he didn't play as good last year as he did the second half of 2023. So maybe it's the emergence of Josh Jacobs and establishing the run a little earlier. That could have been it. But nonetheless, man, you want to see yourself much higher on this list in terms of second second quarter points scored, but you did still improve from the previous year.
Yeah, totally. And I think it is kind of indicative of what we want. Like when I watch a Packer game, if we have a fast start, we always talk about how, when Matt LaFleur had to do the all gas, no brakes, because we got used to seeing we'd just come out to a strong start. All of a sudden, we take the foot off the pedal, and they let them creep back in. And all of a sudden, it's a shootout when it should not have been. And I think this last year, like the records show here, that we maybe had a good start here and there in the first quarter. The second quarter, it seems like we did increase it a little bit, but like you see here, the good teams. I mean, look at Detroit, almost. I mean, 2/3 more than the next person at number 2. It's like when you get that rhythm, you got to put them away, right? You get into that zone and you say, "This is just we're gonna put them down. It's not going to be a shootout. We're going to win this in the second quarter." So at the third and the fourth, then we start saying about. I wouldn't say sitting our starters or anything like that, but we're definitely coasting. Like we want to put you away in the first half. That's the type of football that I think Green Bay needs to get back to, where it's complete domination for 2, 3, 3.5 quarters, and then take the foot off the brake or the foot off the gas if that's what you need to do for whatever reason. But it's a interesting metric because again, you look around where you are. You're sandwiched in between Carolina and Pittsburgh. Is that where you want to be? No. You know what I mean? That to me that's not rare air. That's not good.
Definitely. You see Detroit, they dominated in the second quarter last year, 13.1 points scored per second quarter. They jumped way up from that 8.2 the year before. So Baltimore, solid. Buffalo, solid. Washington, Atlanta, surprisingly, had played pretty well there in the second quarter. And again, it's important because you want to win that middle late. The first step of winning that middle late is to obviously perform very well in the second quarter and then come out in the third quarter and make sure that if you're on defense, hey, look, you're preventing them from grabbing that momentum or keeping that momentum with their offense on the field, and vice versa. On offense, you want to keep the pedal down for sure. So, I like what 2-0 for this says. Take the foot off the gas in late February. Amen to that. Yeah. All right, let's move on to the third quarter. Third quarter, Green Bay is tied for 8th best in third quarter points scored with a 5.7. You're going to notice the numbers are significantly lower for this than the second quarter. Why is that? Again, Bill Belichick 101. First quarter, gathering information. Second quarter, you make your adjustment and focus on controlling the middle late. So as teams made their adjustment, you get that defense back on their heels, right? And you just kind of throw the pedal down. That's what you're seeing here in the third quarter. However, this is where it gets really strange, because let's say the first quarter you go out, you're gathering information, you perform better in the second quarter. Let's say that's the case here, And then when you get into the third quarter, those teams are making second half adjustments for you, right? They're making adjustments. Okay, here's what they're doing. Let's stop them. That's typically why teams bog back down in the third quarter. It's not that they're taking their foot off the brake. It's you got to make that decision. Do we continue doing what we know is working right now? Or do we look to make an adjustment knowing they're going to make an adjustment? And sometimes you can outsmart yourself. You can see ghosts out there, as most coaches say. So really, really cool, though, that Green Bay finished 8th here at 5.7 points per third quarter. Tampa Bay was tied with them in that spot. Right above them in the 7th spot was the Philadelphia Eagles and the Pittsburgh Steelers at 6.3. And then you had Cincinnati and Minnesota tied for 4th with 6.6. Baltimore in the 3 spot, 7.4. And then Buffalo in the number 2 spot at 8.1. And then, of course, once again, leading the way, the Detroit Lions with 8.8 points scored. And that's a huge jump from 2023. Now, when you look at Green Bay and what they did, they actually took a step back last year from the previous year in terms of third quarter points scored. And again, I don't think it's a coincidence that their numbers went way up in the second quarter last year. And then they went down, or they went way up in the first quarter for sure, first half in general, and then they go down in the third quarter. Because, again, when you're having success, the defense adjusts, and that's typically why you get the seesaw effect. So,
yeah, I mean, that Packers team in 2023 was interesting. I remember going in out of halftime and being like, we got this. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we were just, it seemed like we came out and we were just ready to score some points. And it is interesting to think about how the dynamic of that works. Whereas if you start the game off kind of strong, the defense makes adjustments. Like you said, you go into halftime, all of a sudden everybody has the schematics. They're making in-game adjustments. I would really like us to harness that again and just be able to come out of. It's been a while. Like, if I'm crazy, like where it seems like we actually came out of the second half and did make certain adjustments where it's like we were coming out with our piss hot, and I that's the one thing that I'll throw at Matt LaFleur is it seems like that we get complacent with the bye weeks, going to weird situations, away games, and then coming, out of a half. I just feel like there's something there. We need a little bit more of a Dan Campbell essence to get these guys jacked up. Like, I want them running through brick walls. You know what I mean? I don't want them coasting and kind of feeling this or that. I really do think we need more of a motivation to get these guys back to where I want them up there in the Detroit range. I want them coming out of here and scoring the most points in the league out of that adjustment period in the halftime. That's what I want.
Yeah. All right, fourth quarter. This was a pleasant surprise here, as you see in fourth quarter scoring in terms of points per game. The Green Bay Packers finished in the 8th spot at 7.6 points per game, actually tied for sixth.
Yeah.
So they were tied for 6th with Baltimore, Denver, and then, of course, Green Bay there. What's really cool is Green Bay jumped from 5.6 points scored in fourth quarters in 2023 all the way to 7.6. So you, in a league where most games are decided by 3 points or less, here you jumped a full 2 points scored in the most important quarter of the game. I think that's a really, really cool statistic. And we got a little screen grab of another specific statistic specifically for Jordan Love here in a second that I think you guys are going to be really, really surprised about in terms of fourth quarter play. But what do you think about that, Jacob? Obviously, the Super Bowl champions, they had the most points scored in the fourth quarter all year long.
Makes sense,
So,
right?
yeah.
I will tell you this, just like we say at the Oval Office, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. All right. And I'm just saying that, the Packers, if you're going to pick a metric where they should be towards the top, fourth quarter, that's when all the money's on the table. You know what I mean? And I will say that is one thing about Green Bay that I've always loved is that they turn it on in the fourth quarter. And obviously we wish they maybe would have turned it on in the third. It just seems that, as you guys know, like watching the games, if you're like me, you get so nerve-wracked. And the fourth quarter, it just seems like that every play is do or die. And most of the time it turns out okay for us, but it's just it's nice to know that team can turn it on when it matters. That fourth quarter, like I said, it's win or go home. You know what I mean? That's when the lights come on. That's when it's prime time. And it's always been a good. I usually do not get disappointed with at least the amount of effort that the Green Bay Packers put in with that fourth quarter. I'm just saying they usually come to play. I just wish we maybe had that a little more in the beginning of this games is what I'd say.
Definitely. CJ in the chat says, "State's ready for the grill, crown roll on ice, and my glass and PTA on the TV. Life is good."
That'll work.
Love it, man. Love it. Sounds like a nice little Sunday evening here in May. All right, let's break it down into halves now, Jacob. We talked about by quarter. So this is what most coaches focus on right here because sometimes, like I said, you may not get the ball. You may not get like as many possessions as you want in the first or the first or second quarter, or the third quarter, the fourth quarter, but you're going to have your opportunity with the ball in hand for a whole half. That makes sense. So this, to me, I think coaches key in on more than the quarterly aspect. But nonetheless, offensive NFL team, first half points per game. The Packers finished 9th here, tied with the Chargers at 12.9 points scored in the first half. All right, going down the list, Detroit was 1 with 18 points scored. Baltimore was 2, Washington 3, Tampa 4, Buffalo 5, Philly 6, Atlanta 7, Cincinnati 8, and then, of course, the Chargers and the Packers tied there for the number 10 spot. Now, they jumped from 10.6 points scored in the first half in 2023 to their current 12.9 points scored in the first half, which is exactly what we talked about. You wanted to improve that aspect, getting started faster. They definitely did it more specifically in the first quarter, but it's nice to see them in the top 10 here, Jacob. I mean, if you fall into the, around the 15 mark, you probably don't win 11 games. You're probably winning 8 or 9 games last year.
Yeah, I agree. And again, you look at it's interesting to see that Atlanta's up there. The Chargers, Houston, San Francisco. It does show that certain teams can start hot and then absolutely just flash out. I think it's consistent that Green Bay is, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're consistently in this metrics like top 8 top 10. It seems like almost we're consistently inconsistent, if that makes sense, where it's like we're kind of just hanging around that 8 to 10 range, which isn't bad, isn't great, but it's like that's what we need to take the step into being a team like the Detroit, Baltimore, people that are going to really be contenders. And the first half is definitely something. I know Clayton loves the middle 8. That metric. Does that tie into this at all? Can you see any parallels between the middle 8 and first half scoring? You'd probably break it down more from quarters, right? If you did it that way, but
more so from quarters, and even the quarters can be a little bit misleading. That's why it's important to chart the middle 8. And if you guys don't know what we're talking about with middle 8, it's the last 4 minutes of the first half and the first 4 minutes of the second half. And teams use that you want to control the middle 8 because that truly controls the momentum of the game. And I know there's some fans that they just love spreadsheets, love numbers. That's all that matters. And they like to just pretend that momentum isn't it is a real thing. You don't believe me? Go back and watch the Chicago game last year. What did Matt LaFleur talk about in his draft day interview there? I think it was on the Pat McAfee show, or it might have been the Rich Eisen show. He talked about how he mismanaged the clock in the possession there when it came to, I think it was the Chicago game where you ended up giving up points right before the half when you had the ball. This is where I differ from a lot of fans, maybe not the majority of fans, but many fans. We probably differ a little bit on this, Jacob. How many times have I gotten into arguments with people in the chat when they go, God, I hate that playing so conservative right there before the end of the half. And I'm like, no. You got to protect the middle 8 because when you get too aggressive, the Chicago game happens and you look up and go, damn, that's why we lost that ball game.
I think that's probably one of the only times that me and you have actually gotten in an argument. Because you remember, I would always be like, why are they being so conservative? We could have gotten this and this and the points. You're like, nah, dude, you got to take what it's given you. And I'm like, no. That is probably the only one of the only times where we actually got at each other. I remember I can't remember which game it was, but I was like, why the fuck would they not just, do this and do this? And you're like, you got to think about it rationally.
And then later on, I remember, and I was being that pompous ass in the chat. There's a Chicago game, and I remember the Detroit Lions game when Jordan threw the pick 6. I got in the that's why you don't play. You literally.
I remember seeing that text like, son of a bitch.
You literally lost that game on that one play at Detroit against Detroit at Lambeau. And I know people go, "Oh, that's not true." I believe it with everything in me. When you not only do you lose the turnover differential, but you also lose the middle 8 and allow them to score points on one specific play because you're being too aggressive in the piss pouring rain during the middle 8 on your side of the field. That's the type of stuff that can happen, And again, when it doesn't go wrong, you don't hear me going, "Boy, I'm wrong on that." It's the same thing. The same thing applies both ways. But I do believe that most, if not all, NFL head coaches look at it that way. They look at it like, "Hey, here you got to protect that middle 8," because again, the momentum. You can ask Tim when that pick 6 happened. He was right there in the bleachers, drenched. Every bit of energy goes out of that stadium, and now you got to try to get the crowd amped back up to try to get to get loud and give that home field advantage. And once you take the crowd out, man, the toughest part of the game is over for sure.
Yeah.
So,
Jake G 126 says, "Let's just have the Packers boat race everyone this year, then we don't need the middle 8." Hey, I like that strategy, boy.
I like that way better than having to worry about the middle 8.
That's right.
Yeah. So moving on to this again, in the first half, the Packers finished 9th in first half points scored. In the second half, they finished 8th, and they scored 13.2 points in the second half. So even though we would all agree that they got off to a better start this year in the first half compared to 2023, where they were 10.6 points and they jumped all the way to 12.9, in 2024, they actually stayed exactly the same, which is impressive. When you can improve the first half scoring and then stay in the same spot in the second half and it not kind of hinder you on kind of, using up your entire clip there in the first half.
Also, Clay, look at that number. Who else is better than us in the back half of the year in 2023? I didn't realize that we turned it on the fourth quarter, and that's kind of what I remember. Like I said, it's just like when it was fourth quarter, it's like, all right, Green Bay straps in, hits himself in the face and says, all right, let's do this now. Exactly. I don't want us to have to do that necessarily. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want us to try to figure that out. Look at Detroit and Philly in the last 3 games. You know what I mean? Like, those guys were just, they turned on. That exactly tells you as to why they went on the stretch they did. You get hot when you get hot, and you gotta capitalize on that. The Packers are right there though, dude. You know what I mean? Like, they are just if certain things would have tweaked just a little bit in either direction, this team could have been absolute studs.
Jacob, they were a legit top 10 offense. I would argue they're borderline top 3, maybe top 5, possibly top 3 in certain aspects, like running the ball. I mean, their receivers led the league in drops, depending on which website you use. But I mean, it's high enough. No matter if you think they're the worst or third worst, it's enough to make an impact in the outcome of the game. So let's say they led the league in drops. They were also the youngest roster constructed. That's why I go, people need to stop complaining about Matt LaFleur.
Quarterback with 3 injuries.
Yeah, like that. I mean, this dude, you lost your first-round pick to an injury, right? Yep. You lost your third-round pick to an injury. That ended his season. Your second-round pick from the year before, Luke Musgrave, he goes down with an injury.
Yeah.
Christian Watson battled injuries all year long. You end up losing him down the stretch, but
same with
he
Dobbs.
was banged up most of the year. Romeo Dobbs, like – Matt LaFleur is the real deal. There's no two ways about it. Now, when you talk about second half scoring, fourth quarter scoring, all that aspect, this is one of the statistics that I stumbled across, and I actually seen the tweet come down the line. You want to know why they were so good? Look at this. Best passer rating when trailing in the NFL. Jordan Love had the 3rd highest passer rating at 104.3 when his team was losing. So, again, there's 2 ways you can look at this. Only above him was Joe Burrow, who was just lights out at 120.3, Lamar Jackson at 107.0. Then you got Jordan Love. He was higher than Jalen Hurts, higher than Jaden Daniels, higher than Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, Jared Goff, Tua Tagovailoa, and Joe Flacco. So, 3rd best in the league. However, when you struggle to protect the football in the first half, if he gets that cleaned up, and continues to play well while trailing, obviously you're going to have less opportunities trailing because you're winning the ball game more often if you protect the ball early in the game. But this is just one of those statistics that when you look up and go, look at the company he's in here. Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, and Jaden Daniels, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen. He's 4 spots higher than your MVP last year in terms of passer rating while trailing. This gives me a lot of hope, and it kind of makes me rethink the whole poise grade that I gave him.
That's a good point.
We both gave him a 5 the other night. Emilio gave him a 6. I think Emilio was probably a little closer to correct there in terms of this. So,
I mean, if you wanted to, that's a great metric. Joe Burrow, though, my God, 120.3.
Oh, yeah,
that's crazy. And you could look at it through a different lens and say, well, why are they behind? Blah blah. Okay, cool. But if you are going to be behind the 8 ball going into any sort of game, that's the type of performance you would want from a quarterback that's quote unquote your franchise quarterback. And like you said, you sit him up there with the Joe Burrows, the Lamar Jacksons, and Jalen Hurts, and he's smack dab in the middle of those guys. Okay, yeah, I will absolutely take that. And like you said, that is, I hate putting an asterisk next to every single Jordan Love stat that we saw, but you have to think about the fact that he played hurt so much of that last year. The drops were such a huge factor. Like if any of those situations, even 1 or 2 of them were somewhat remedied, this guy's maybe number 2, maybe number 1. Who knows what's going to go on there? And I think it's a big deal as to why, people kind of scoffed and thought, oh my God, the Packers got a wide receiver in the first round. They got Savion. Why? When they have all these talent? Well, guess what? The talent didn't quite come to what we needed. And Matt LaFleur, to his credit, I always want this guy to get a little more belt under him and not be such cute Matt LaFleur. I want him to get more freaking pit bull Matt LaFleur. And that's what he did. He said, all right, guys, you're on notice. I'm going to grab a couple more guys that I can plug and play. If you guys aren't going to be helping Jordan Love, if you're not going to be helping this Packers team, if you think you can slump around and just not catch balls and help the quarterback, help the offense, help the team, we're going to put you on notice. Imagine if we had guys that actually caught those 20 drops or whatever the hell it was last year. That rating goes up quite a bit.
Yeah, I think it's a very fair point. Sure. All right. So there is your offensive ranking breakdown. We'll probably end the show there. Let's hit a couple in the chat here. Taylor Bell says, what happens if LVN's not a starter and he plays better being a rotational guy? And Matt did say he wants more great players to make coaches look great. I think it's a big misconception, Taylor, that people, I think in this Madden era, and especially fantasy football, they want the guys that are on their roster to be on the field at all times. I think people truly don't understand how many teams rotate their edge defenders. And then when you look at the teams that don't rotate them, like your Max Crosby's and your TJ Watts, as good as those players are, look at how often they're hurt, Jacob. You know? And all it takes is your top edge defender going down. Now all of a sudden you're dipping into that rotational aspect, being your third or fourth best pass rusher on the team. So I think that, again, this doesn't surprise me that they have such a heavy rotation because it's been going on forever. Like when Matt LaFleur took the job, it was Mike Pettin was the DC. Heavy defensive line rotation there. I remember people complaining about it, going, Mike Pettin in this rotation, blah, blah, blah. Okay, Matt LaFleur is the head coach. They changed to Joe Barry. Same exact rotation, right? Maybe not exact, but, heavy rotation on defensive line. They changed to Jeff Hafley. Same exact thing, right? So we've got to stop blaming the DC for these heavy hockey line rotations. This is a Matt LaFleur thing. And I'm not saying you should blame Matt either. Look around the league. You'll see other teams doing it. I just want to point that out, that 3 different coordinators now, and you still have a heavy rotation. That tells me that's a Matt LaFleur decision and what he's telling his defensive coaches, how he wants a heavier rotation. And it sounds like they agree. If the DC came in and said, no, I want less of a rotation, Matt would probably listen to him. He'd probably give him freedom to run it the way he wants, but it's obvious that they all agree, hey, this is the way to go here. Dave's MX6 Garcia says, I would like more of a 60 to 65% edge split instead of that 50-ish like last year. I wouldn't have a problem with that.
I was going to say, I agree with that. Just because I want to put our aces in places in certain situations where it's like, when I look at a game and it's in the third, fourth quarter, it's a third down and I don't see Rashawn Gary on the field. I go, what the fuck are we doing?
And people, what kills me is hearing fans complain last year going, Rashawn Gary ain't even on the field enough. Well, that's not a Rashawn Gary thing.
Yeah, it's not his fault.
It's a coach thing, right? And here's what's crazy is everybody talks about he can't crack the 10-sack mark. I wonder why. Right?
Yeah. And I will say too that like what Dave said, I would like our studs just to maybe be out there a little more prevalent in certain situations. But where did I see it? Yeah, coach says Eagles heavy rotation. They had a massive rotation. The difference I would argue is that their rotational guys are just as good as some of the guys they're putting in. You know what I mean? Their backups are almost as good as some of their starters. So, and you see that with the way that they draft. They have been, good Lord, they have been hitting some gems in their drafts the last few years, especially in the trenches. So, I think that's the direction that we're heading. If I had to guess, because of the way that we've addressed, hopefully those trenches, I want to see like a Warren Brinson, but obviously Soren's, what's his, what the heck is his name? Barron
Sorrell.
Barron Sorrell. Thank you. I got a lot of hope in him, man. I got a lot of hope in Oliver. Is it Oliver? Olivier? Have we figured that out yet?
It's Oliver.
Colin. And that's a different type of person we've had on that edge compared to he's a little bit undersized, quote unquote, but man, I think he can bend. And I just really am excited to see the tweaks that I think Jeff Hafley now is in his game. He understands what he has and what he doesn't have. And I think maybe he understands now that he needed certain pieces and to have guys do certain things that they maybe weren't doing last year. And boy, I'm excited. I have more faith in Hafley and him being in charge of that defensive rotation than any other defensive coordinator that we've had in recent memory.
Yeah, same, man, same. And here's the thing too. I want to make myself very clear. I will not be surprised if our defense takes a step back this year. Okay, and people go, "What are you talking about?" Calm down. This is normal. Okay, I'm saying this because when a new DC takes over, especially one who has not been a defensive coordinator at the NFL level, teams don't know how to attack him, okay? So then you go into the second year, guess what? That DC has now got to make a decision. Do we continue doing what we did last year, knowing those offenses, those other 31 offenses, have all of our game tape from the previous year? Do we stick with what's working and then adjust as they begin to up their attack on it and know how to beat it now? Or do you make an adjustment now, trying to get ahead of the curve and then maybe outsmart yourself? These are the tough decisions that these coaches go through. So I'm just simply saying, historically speaking, the second year of the DC's reign, no matter who it, and not, I'm sure there's been some that have gotten better in the second year, but more times than not, DCs will take a slight step back in year 2 and then jump back up in year 3 if they're good DCs. So I just want to mention that, because please, 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 if they take a step back this year, please don't call for the firing of Jeff Hafley, okay? Because there's going to be still some growing pains there, and it's going to continue to happen. Now, yes, players will come in, they'll have a better grab of the scheme, and he's going to try to add another wrinkle or two in, I'm sure, probably more than that. I'm just simply saying, historically speaking, it's not the end. Listen to me, please. It's not the end of the freaking world if we look up and they've fallen back 3 or 4 spots scoring defense-wise this year. That's totally normal. However, if you see Jeff Hafley's defense improve again, you're looking at a guy that's about to get a head coaching job. That's going to happen.
Yeah. It's one of those double-edged swords where you're like, I really hope that I don't see a situation where Jeff Hafley isn't a head coach in the next 5 years. I just don't. He just has such a good rapport with the players. He's so good with the media. He has such a demeanor about him where it's like, it's calm in a way, but at the same time, it makes you want to jump through a freaking brick wall. So that's a rare quality to have for a coach.
CJ Ian said, there will be, Clay. I know maybe this is just me using this podcast as therapy to mentally prepare for those fans who are going to be calling for Jeff Hafley's job. If they take a slight step back. Let's jump into the scoring team rankings real quick, Jacob, before we wrap up here, man. Same thing as the offensive side. We don't have near as many stats, I don't believe, but we'll kind of run through them quick. We'll make sure we're done here at hour 20. If you got to go, you just go, man, if you ever have to hop off here. So let's go to team opponent points per play. Jeff Hafley had this defense 5th best in the National Football League, only allowing 0.329 points per play. Minnesota Vikings were in the number 4 spot ahead of them, Philadelphia Eagles at 3, Chargers at 2, and the Denver Broncos in the first place spot. Now, when you look at the year before, obviously Joe Barry's last year, it was definitely an improvement from opponent points per play, jumping to 5th at the 0.329. The year before, they had a 0.334. Not crazy different. If you had the same number of rankings this year, it means we probably would have went from like 8th to 5th, which is an improvement. It definitely got better. So there is that. And then the points per game, we finished 5th. So you see the same exact spot there, giving up 20 points per game this year. Under Joe Barry, they gave up 21.4 points per game. So you got 1.4 points better in 2024 as opposed to 23. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's top 5, let's go. Green Bay right there, it's a quiet type, because if I'm being honest with myself, I thought the Packers very much improved with the defense. I wouldn't have considered them a top 5, but when you look at a lot of the metrics, it's like, yep, there they are. They really did do that well. And I think that Packer fans, we talk about how sometimes we're very spoiled and we get very I don't know if conceited is the right word, but like we seem to have an inability to acknowledge the fact that maybe we're not the top of the top. And then even when we start being towards the top of the top, the same fans are going, well, we're not that good. We're not that great. It's like, we need to understand what we have in Jeff Hafley, the guy coming into a situation with basically the same squad that other defensive coordinators had. I think he got more out of them than even I expected. And that I think my hopes were exceeded, to be honest. Like, realistically, like when Hafley took the job, you thought, well, is he going to be able to turn this around? Is he able to keep it on the same course? Is he going to drastically fall off? I think that he incrementally improved our defense, and I think that it's to the point where I have much more faith going into this next season that he's going to take that team to the next level. I really do. I do think that. I would be surprised if we're in a top 3 in all of these metrics going in.
Yeah, for sure. All good said, points per play means nothing to me. It's funny you say that. And listen, we can agree to disagree. This has been explained to me as the most important, I want to repeat, the most important statistic metric used in the gambling community. This is what they see as the most important gauge on how good a defense or an offense is playing. Like when you go to points per game, that can be manipulated by a quick turnover, right? Let me give you an example. If a team turns the ball over, right, and that team scores on the very next play, you're going to see their points per game be inflated, right? However, if the next team holds them, if you go to the same situation where the ball is turned over on their side of the field and a defense stands tall for 3 straight plays, that drives the points per play down, right? And then, of course, the 3 points they have to settle for, as opposed to the 7 where that team scored real quick because they got a turnover inside the 5. That's why points per play is way more important than points per game.
Yep.
But again, I started using this metric about 6-7 years ago because people in the gambling community told me, if you do not have a bead on points per play, you're going to get your ass handed to you in the gambling game. So just keep that in mind there. So points per game, it's important. Don't get me wrong. But you're not going to be able to convince me that points per play is less important than points per game, because points per game has points per game baked into the recipe. You're just getting a little bit deeper wrinkle with the points per play. So I was very, very thankful when they turned me onto that metric. And sure enough, man, you can really get a great lock into how games play out. And we know that's what it comes down to, is the final score. And ultimately that's what the gambling community is all about. It was really, really cool. When that got uncovered, it was an aha moment for me. So again, we can agree to disagree on that, but yeah,
that's why I'm just flabbergasted that you don't do fantasy football, man. I feel like
here's why I don't do fantasy football, Jake. I found myself not worrying about how the game ended. It was more about, God, I need him to get another touch. I need him to get another carry. I need him. And that's not football to me, because, think of it this way. How many times have we seen a running back break off a big run at the end of the game and then lay down on the 1 yard line? And
that crushes you.
And the fantasy community is like, this is garbage. And I'm going, that is an unselfish player doing what was best for the team. And on one side, this community is looking at it as a negative. That's just one little blip on the radar.
I've heard stories of how a quarterback takes a kneel, and because the point system is so drastic, they lose by like 0.1%. You're like, oh no.
Same thing, man. Yeah. And it was at Holmes. Yes, Clay. To me, it's a perversion. LOL. So to me, it doesn't feel like real football. Now, I'll tell you what I do enjoy is like DraftKings. If I sit down on a Sunday night to watch a Sunday night game, I'll go, you know what? Let's see what the overs and unders are. All right, let me throw a little parlay together, right? Put a little action on the game. My old ass falls asleep. I wake up in the third quarter and go, how many yards does he got? That's kind of fun. But it just kind of ruins the game for me a little bit. And again, I'm not knocking fantasy. One thing I love about fantasy, Jacob, the main thing I love about it is seeing how excited people get over their fantasy football leagues. It was an absolute blessing last year watching the PTA group do their fantasy football league. It was so fun watching the banter and keeping up with the rankings. I love that aspect. It's just something that I'm over here charting, you know how I am with the game. I've literally got the game on mute, guys, when I watch the Packers play. Unless it's like someone I really, really like calling a game, and I'm charting the game. I'm charting first down passes. I'm charting turnover differential. I'm charting middle late plays. I'm charting run to pass ratio, all this stuff. So the fantasy aspect, I guess I get my fix off that. Makes sense. So, but yeah, you're not the first person to tell me. I got a good friend named Jay. He watches the show, and he was like, Clayton, man, I don't understand why you don't get in our fantasy football league. I'm like, man, I just can't do it. I feel like I'm cheating on the game of football. I do, man. It's just really, really strange. So there's a couple in here I wanted to hit real quick. We already hit that one. We'll come back to them. I got a couple of them marked. Let's move along here. So again, what that tells me though, Jacob, scoring offense, we're top 5, baby. That's awesome. Absolutely awesome. So, and somebody pointed out in the chat, they didn't like and this is points allowed per play, right? And per game. They pointed out how our defense struggled on the road, Jacob, and I think it's a valid point, right? 0.357 in away games as opposed to 0.329 on the year. Really, really good at home, though, 0.298 in points per play. And when it comes to the away games, the Packers were giving up 23.2 points on the road, but at home only 16.8. So shout out to the home crowd, making it a little more difficult, I'm sure has something to do with it. So Now let's go into red zone scoring. This is where they struggled a little bit, okay?
Yeah.
This is opponent red zone scoring percentage. Touchdowns only. Again, we removed the field goals here. And this is the percentage in which offenses scored a touchdown once they got inside the 20, the red area, the red zone, whatever you want to call it. And Denver leading the way here at 44.44% in touchdowns allowed in red zone percentage. The Packers ended up finishing 16th at 57.41%. So I guarantee you, Coach Hafley, going into this year is going, hey, guys, we got to get better at red zone defense. That's definitely something we can work on. When you go back to 2023, this is going to piss some Joe Barry haters off. Remember what we talked about with that quarters coverage, right? It's bend but don't break, bend but don't break. Once you get into, when you play a lot of zone match, once you get inside the 20, that field really shrinks, right? And that's where you can be a little more aggressive, and you're going more out of the realm of what you did all the way down the field. You're allowing them to take the little dink and dunks, dink and dunks, dink and dunks. But once you get inside the 20, you're out of room, buddy. You got to settle for a field goal. The reality is Joe Barry, his red zone percentage was 53.97 in
Like
2023.
top 5, top 7?
Probably would have been, I would imagine, yeah. And then in 2024, Jeff Hafley drops back to 57.41. Again, not saying Jeff Hafley is horrible, but he's middle of the pack in red zone percentage. So we got to get better there. And I just think it's one of those things, Jacob, where people see it and they go, okay, yeah, it's because, you're playing bend but don't break. That's true. You're playing bend but don't break all the way down the field. But then once the field shrinks, you adjust your defense as opposed to Hafley. He probably adjusted in the altar. If you're being a little more aggressive with how you're playing there with way less quarters. We played a lot of cover 6 and a lot of cover 2 is what we did last year, zone defense. So you probably played a little more man in the red zone, getting a little more aggressive, and that's probably why you gave up more points.
Yeah, and I'd argue, too, that we got better as the year went on. If you look at the last 3, that number goes to 44.4. You look at the last game, bruh, 25%. I mean, we turned it on. People talk about, I was going to say, like, people talk about how, I should say people don't talk about how much we actually gave them a shot, man. We played them harder than the freaking Super Bowl team did. You know what I mean?
Yep, I agree, man. Completely agree. All right, moving along. Let's go to first quarter. How did Jeff Hafley's defense do first quarter? He's a scheme guy. He's a game plan guy, and it showed up big time. In 2024, they only allowed 2.8 points per game in the first quarter, second best in the league, tied with Baltimore. Only the Chargers were better. That was a drastic improvement from the 2023 numbers where they were at 3.4, right? Now, moving on to the second quarter, the Packers finished significantly lower, 24th at 8.2 points allowed in second quarters. They fell from 6.2 under Joe Barry to 8.2. But typically what you see is in the first quarter, that flips, right? So if you're really good in the first quarter, you're probably going to struggle a little bit in the second quarter. It kind of comes out in the wash, but nonetheless, what you're seeing is, again, the first quarter, you're gathering information. Jeff Hafley had these boys ready to go in the first quarter, and then as the other team made the second quarter adjustments, that number gets a little inflated, right? And this is just game planning 101 in terms of coaches. So with that being said, does that catch you off guard there? They were second best in points allowed in the first quarter. However, in the second quarter, they fell all the way to 24th. Does that worry you? Do you think that's just a byproduct of what we talked about, how being so good in the first quarter, teams adjusted in the second, and then those numbers are a little inflated?
It's a little worrisome, to be honest, that like you said, you come out strong in the first and then they make those adjustments. I'd like for us to make the adjustments so that they can't kind of counteract that. But it's a little troubling, to be honest, but I'm not ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater. You know what I mean? So it's, I think that's, again, one thing that there's very few aspects of the defense where it's like, we got to get better in this way. You know what I mean? This is one of them. So I think Jeff Hafley probably looks at that as a welcomed criticism, and it is a big jump too, from, you see the kind of the grouping from Buffalo, Cincinnati, Chicago, and the Giants, Dallas, and then Green Bay is up there about, what is that, 7 decimal points kind of thing. So it's not the best situation there, but I think that's something that we could just improve on. It's a learning deal.
H.E. Solder in the chat says, any idea what the third I think he's saying third down distance stop percentage was, right? Feel like they were not great on getting off the field in 2024. Here's what's crazy, Soder. I've got the team rankings on another tab open here. And basically, if you're talking about third down defense, this is team opponent third down conversion percentage. Okay, so this is when they converted on third down, right? The Packers were actually seventh best last year at 36.53%. The year before, 43.7%, which would have put them in the 27 mark. So Jeff Hafley dramatically improved in terms of preventing third down conversions, if that's what you're asking. When you said third distance stop percentage, I'm assuming you were talking about third down. Correct me if I'm wrong in the chat if that's the case. So that is, I'm glad you asked the question. Whether that's the question you were asking or not, it's cool to uncover that information. And we're going to do a little bit deeper dive on the other metrics as we move forward in the offseason as well. We just wanted to focus on scoring tonight because this is like drinking from a fire hose here. So, all right, moving on to the third quarter now. Third quarter score. HE Soda crazy. I'm just traumatized. Amen. Amen from the year before, right? All right. So third quarter points allowed per game for this Packers defense. They finished 20th. So they struggled in the third quarter as well, allowing 5.1 points. However, they did improve from 5.4 points the year before, Jacob. So again, if you walk back through it, first quarter, second best, second quarter, dropped down significantly. Third quarter got a little bit better than the second quarter, but you're still struggling. They lost the middle eight a lot last year. I remember that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I remember you saying that a lot when we, our group text. Clayton does not respond to most messages, but randomly you'll just randomly see, boys, we lost the middle eight. that's what
and that's how I top it too in all boys.
Like literally, I'm not even joking. He will barely respond to anybody, but he'll tell you if we lost or won the middle eight.
I think that's in cornbread font. If you guys are wondering, that's how I text that over. So now, typically what I'll do is try to give you guys an idea of at the end of the first half turnover differential, middle eight where it sits, right, and kind of a quick recap, and then as soon as the middle eight's over, I want to try to get you guys that information. I'll tweet it out too. I'll put it out so going into the fourth quarter, did we win the middle eight and are we winning the turnover differential? That's what's important. So there you go. Yeah, Clay's middle name is middle eight. I've actually got on the inside of my wedding band here. It says middle eight. So there you go. Third quarter struggled a little bit, 5.1 points allowed. Now fourth quarter, however, Jacob, look at this one, boy. Look at that, boy. First in the league at 3.9 points allowed in the fourth quarter last year. The best in the National Football League. So, boy, oh boy, can Jeff Hafley play that standalone game we talk about. Again, first quarter, gather information. Second quarter, control the middle eight into the third quarter as well. And then the fourth quarter is a standalone game. What did you learn how they were attacking you? Make your adjustment and treat the fourth quarter like it's its own game. There's nobody better in the league last year than Jeff Hafley at 3.9, jumping all the way from a 6.4 in 2023. Phenomenal job by Jeff Hafley's staff, man.
Yeah, and it's not just like that we were good. We were a full 5 decimal points over the next one, which was Tampa Bay at 4.4. So that is quite impressive. I mean, to the point where I didn't even realize that this was the metric. It does kind of make sense because it's tough because when you think about a typical Packers game, just in my head, it was, maybe a strong start. All of a sudden, you let them back in the game. All of a sudden, you let them creep in the game again. All of a sudden, the fourth quarter, we tighten up. We play as if we're freaking superstars. And you just ask yourself, why weren't we doing this the whole game? Why weren't we playing like this the whole freaking game? And it leaves a little bit of frustration there. But I tell you what, you can't do much better than the first. So that's a metric that I hope that Hafley carries over. And, this is a great exercise again because I did not give the Packers defense this much credit, and I should have. I should have given them more credit, I think. And it's nice to see the numbers. It's nice to see how they stack up compared to the rest of the NFL.
Yeah, and that's why it's important. Like once the smoke is settled, and I try to do this during the post-game shows as much as I can to kind of put things into perspective. Again, if you guys have never tuned into our post-game shows, I'm really excited about you having an opportunity to do that this year. We try not to. I'm going to say it again. We try not to come in here overly emotional. I tell the guys, if we lose, hey, 20-minute cool off, and we're going to come in here and listen. Packer fans are upset too. We're going to give them something to laugh about. We're going to have a good time. People are not going to leave the post-game show depressed, but we're also going to talk about what happened and why did it happen. So I try to give people an idea of, all right, here's what truly happened, as opposed to being drunk, live stream, going, this defense sucks. What are we doing?
Yeah.
Everybody calm down and let's take a second and realize what actually happened.
I take back my previous statement. Other than the middle eight text, Clayton will be like, all right, boys, we're going live in 20. If you're too depressed, don't hop on the stream.
And I love everyone. I love you guys, but listen, we're not going to get in here and turn this into a crybaby session. We're going to have I'm not going to do anything. I'm 42 years old. I don't know how many more years I got left. I sound like Papa over here, right? I'm not going to be upset watching football. So we're going to have a good time, win, lose, or draw. But we're going to talk about what happened too. So that's funny that you remember that, because I did make a valiant effort. And I understand it, man. I get it. Like, you think I ain't pissed off? You think I don't throw my ink pen against TV in here charting this game? But people tune in, to have a good time. So we do try to put a little.
Clayton deals with what I deal with, where a lot of times you have a friend group where, for whatever reason, with the Green Bay Packers, they want to send you negative, pessimistic, and you have to be the sounding board. My little brother, bless his heart, he's that way. I cannot watch a game with him because the first quarter, 2 seconds in, he's like, we're losing the game. And you're like, all right, Sammy, let's just chill here. It's tough because it drags me down personally, because I'm a type of guy where I want to feel positive. I'm forever hopeful. I've watched too many Packer games to know that, like, man, you could see something amazing happening here. I don't want to sit here and dwell. And also, like, while you're watching the game, it's enjoyable for me. I don't want to sit there and wallow the whole time while I'm watching the game. That's not why. Nobody does anything to feel miserable. I mean, other than being a Bears fan,
And you're born into that, It is what it is.
Yeah.
No, but it's so true. Like, I tell people, I wait. Like, right now, it's May. It's May 25th, guys. I'm sitting down here counting down the days. I cannot wait till football season. Oh my gosh, man! I can't wait till football season. Like, I can't wait till mini camp this next week. Right, we'll be 2-3 days away. Then I can't wait till OTA, the mandatory mini camp. Then I can't wait till training camp. Then I can't wait till preseason regular. Like, I'm waiting all year long for this. I'll be damned if I'm going to wait all year long and then be pissed off and depressed during the football season. Not going to do it. Not going to do it. So anyway, there's that. Let's just kind of break it down into halves now. Okay. First half, points allowed per game. Jeff Hafley's defense finished 14th. Okay. At 11 points allowed in the first half. Guys, that was a step back from Joe Barry last year in 2023, who had 9.6 points allowed in the first half. Okay. Now, it's not a huge step back, but it's a step back. Again, if you see it, you got to say it, right? Now, when you go to second half, however, fifth best, and that's when it probably matters the most, right? Now, again, when you look at how the Packers finished with 11 wins, and we know that Jordan Love struggled at times, remember that stat we talked about, his passer rating when trailing? Mm-hmm. It lines up perfect. The perfect storm was Jordan Love played really good when he was losing last year, and Jeff Hafley called his best games in the second half of the game. That's a recipe for maybe winning 2 extra games that you should have lost. So that's a good little combination there. I like that. So in terms of second half points per game, they did get significantly better last year, okay? In 2023, they had 11.7 points allowed in the second half, and then under Jeff Hafley, they climbed to 9, which was fifth best in the league, or dropped down to 9 points allowed, which is fifth best in the league. So if you were to say, Clayton, you got to choose, you're going to either have a defensive coordinator who's going to be better in the first half or the second half, I'd probably choose the second half, me personally. Because you're going to feel like the defense is going to clamp down, and your offense is going to have opportunity to come back and win the ball game. So you'd love it to be all 4 quarters, but, that's the way it goes. That's life, right? Sounds like life to me. So
yeah, definitely.
Anything else, Jacob? Anything else stick out to you, or any other comments you want to make before we get ready to wrap this thing up, man?
Yeah. Okay. Doc says, did the Beard get his ass tat yet? And Querying Minds would like to know. Look, it's going to happen. I'm not a guy that's going to – I don't shy away from tattoos, first of all. And a bet's a bet. I'm trying to lose a little weight because right now I feel bad for the person that would have to tattoo my fat ass. But it's going to happen.
He's delaying the tattoo. in honor of the artist because he doesn't want the tattoo artist to have to deal with
like
the flabby cheek.
I gotta shave. It's a whole thing, No, I'm gonna do it. I have too many. My cousin is a very good tattoo artist. I have one of my best friends who's a tattoo artist. I got another second cousin that's amazing in LA. It's gonna happen. My butt's gonna get. Never mind. That came out wrong. Don't clip it, Tim.
Yeah, he will. He will.
Yeah, he will.
All right, let's go to the chat here. Holmes says, this was one that was marked earlier. Packers needs to commit to crushing teams, just demoralizing them by halftime. When we do that and Matt calls the game that way, these guys would be top notch. The problem with that, Holmes, is it's not like he isn't trying. I promise you, Matt LaFleur isn't sitting back going, let me save my good stuff for the second half. Again, they're trying to gather information. Here's what they do, and it's easy for us fans. I'm as guilty as anyone. You get caught up in the moment. I just talked about keeping my cool, and I get as frustrated as anybody, right? They go into the week. They probably watched the previous 4-game saturation of their opponent, as well as the last 2 head-to-head against that specific OC and DC, whether they were with that team or not. And they put a game plan together on how they're going to attack that team based off of the information they have at hand on how that team, that coordinator on both sides of the ball tried to attack them, right? And then when you come out in the first quarter and you launch that game plan into effect, you got your openers, all that. If it's not working, then you got to make that adjustment in the second quarter, right? That carries over into the third quarter and then the fourth quarter standalone game. I promise you, Holmes, Matt LaFleur is not going, let's just wait before we put our foot on the pedal, right? They just don't call games like that. It's a boring argument or a boring response, but the reality is the other team gets paid too. That's just the way it is in the NFL. So let's see here. Deadfish says, luckily teams tend to take OCs as head coaches lately. Hafley might be with us for a while because of that. I think that's a great point, Deadfish, and I hope it continues to hold true. I personally think like that. I don't want a defensive coach as a head coach. I want an offensive mind. That's just how I would construct my team if I owned one. Mm-hmm. So Demetrius Melvin says, I want to see Hopper, Sorrell, Brinson, Oliver, and Stackhouse in this defense. Every player that you named off there, Demetrius, not one of them do I go, I don't really know. You know what's crazy? Hopper's the only one that I'm a little more hesitant on than the others, and he was a third-round pick simply because he was a third-round pick and he couldn't hardly sniff the field. I know he had injuries, right? They say he's a thumper, but he struggles in pass coverage. But Sorrell, maybe I'm being a fanboy. Maybe I've watched too many highlight reels, but I really think there's something there. I would not be surprised at all if we look up, by halfway point of the season in 2024 and go, Sorrell he has passed Enigbare up. Like I could see that happening. He's got all the tools. He's got to go out there and do it. Brinson, I'm a little bit lower on, but I can see the value there. Oliver is really exciting because if Colin Oliver makes it on the field, Jake, but we talked about this the other night, I think it means that Jeff Hafley is pressed into maybe a Leo or a Viper role in his defense, and that gets exciting whether it works or not. Because as a junkie, as a nerd here when it comes to the game tape, I'm going to be diving into that going, they've got a hybrid out there now. Colin Oliver fits that mode to a T. And, of course, Nazir Stackhouse, to me, he looks like a dog. He's won 2 national championships with the Georgia Bulldogs, if I remember correctly. The only problem, I think one of the reasons why he dropped that narcolepsy, is that what it is? Where you fall asleep all the time? It's a real thing. They said he would fall asleep on the sidelines. It's a medical condition. I wish I could blame a medical condition on my old ass having to take a nap every afternoon, but I don't have that luxury. So anyway, what do you think about those guys mentioned there, Jacob? Let me ask you about Hopper, and just real quick, what comes to mind when you think of Hopper? Do you think we got something there? Is it still too early? What do you think there?
I really do have hopes for him. Look at Chris says second round talent, Clayton per Goot. That's what Hopper, what Goot had on him was the second round talent. That to me, let's go. Coach says play Hopper on early downs, let him be that thumper. I kind of agree with that too. First and second down, let him just go frickin' fill those holes. Yeah, that came out weird. I'm just saying it's the type of player where if we have an avenue for him to go and succeed, I think that Jeff Hafley is the type of coach to put him in the right position. Like I said, I think he puts aces in their places, and maybe we just need a little bit more time where he understands how the speed of the NFL goes. He had the injury, all that kind of stuff. I am really excited personally about Oliver, like to the point where again, if you look at his first two games when he had this last year, he got hurt after those first two games. He got hurt midway through the second game. But in those first two games, the dude was putting up numbers that were unbelievable. I'm talking 30% pressure rate. He had like 16 pressures in 2 games. I mean, he was playing like his hair was on fire, and he wasn't playing against, I believe it was against like Arkansas and then South Dakota State. So again, not the best talent, but South Dakota State is nothing to shake a stick at nowadays. I love the fact that like they acknowledge that, yeah, he's not the prototypical type of guy we have. He can play stack backer. He can play edge. He can play, a little bit more of that, like you said, that Viper role. Let's go. Like it's been a while since we had somebody that was more of a designated pass rusher, and I've seen people compare him to prime Clay when Clay was off that edge and just had that bend and that snap. Like he could duck under somebody, he could get under the pad level and then just take an angle to the quarterback. And he was so good at closing. And if you guys watch, I'm telling you tonight, when we get off this, look at Oliver, look at his highlight reel, not even just the last year, but the year before. He can get it, dude. He can bend and he plays very well in space. So yeah. I'm quite excited for him to bust up that defense right there.
If we wasn't way over on time, I'd say let's just tee up the Colin Oliver chalk talk right now. I got it ready to go, bro. It's the thing that stuck out the most to me with the Colin Oliver tape is instincts. Whether he's rushing the quarterback or dropping into coverage, that dude, he is so spatially aware. And I don't know, his play rec is just through the roof. And that's at the college level. Got to take that into consideration. But I think that is something that's very, very important for sure. So, all right, moving along here as we get ready to wrap up. Some sad news here from Coach Lynn says, did y'all hear what happened to Julian Fleming, the wide receiver from Penn State that we cut for failing his physical? Sounds like, and again, I'm going to say allegedly, not out of disrespect to you, Coach, but anytime we hit stuff on live on the show like this, we don't have all the details and this and that, but it sounds like there was an ATV accident that killed his girlfriend and seriously injured himself. Man, that's so Coach, I guarantee you as a coach, you see that all the time, right? Like you hear about it, not just probably from your team necessarily, but from other teams where guys get out there and they, maybe make a bad decision or just have a horribly unfortunate thing happen and it completely changes the trajectory of the life, man. It sucks so bad, man. So bad. So thoughts and prayers out to Julian Fleming and obviously that young lady's family if that did prove to be true there. So It sucks, man.
Yeah, unfortunately, it looks like it is true. I looked it up. Like you said, man, you go from having arguably one of the best moments of your life being in the NFL to having something so catastrophic happen. It just reminds you that you got to take each day one step at a time, be absolutely thankful. And, it's sometimes just the world is it's a hard place, so that's where, again, like we sit here and we talk about football every day. You know what I mean? Like as if it's something important. It's not, it's a luxury that we have. Again, tying it back to Memorial Day, man, we get to sit on here and goof back and forth talking about this or that because we have a freedom to do so that was paid for with someone else's blood. And I think we need to remember that.
Yeah. So again, man, thoughts and prayers out to both their families, and hopefully Fleming's all right there, man. That sucks bad. So ending it on a little bit better notice, Coach Lynn brings it back around here. Says OTAs are here on Tuesday. Let's go. I'm excited about it, guys. We'll have the guys back out there. I think the media will be available for some of that, so that'll be cool. They'll get to meet with the players. We'll also get a couple clips of them running around in their underwear, catching balls and stuff like that. So it'll be an exciting time, and really, really excited about training camp. One of my favorite times of the year. We did this last year, Jacob, especially on the Saturday training camp practices where the media is there giving updates, and we just do a live stream during the training camp. I love that, man. Have Twitter pulled up, hitting on the stuff in real time. I remember that last year was absolutely awesome. So
yeah, I would bet too that when Tim gets back from his vacation that he's probably going to be right up in there too, giving us some ground level type reporting there. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah. All right, guys, that'll do it. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us. We will be back tomorrow. I kind of like this 6:30 p.m. Central start, getting us out of here a little earlier. We may try to do that a little more consistently, Jacob. Did that work for you tonight or not?
It worked tonight. Usually I get off work at 6, so I got to run to get here by 7. But Wait,
Okay,
I can make it work. Make it work.
We'll see how it goes moving forward. When you get as old as me, it's nice to get to bed 30 minutes earlier. That 30 minutes helps. But anyway, we'll be back either at 6:30 tomorrow or 7 p.m. Central. Appreciate everybody. If you're new here, hit that like button. Feel free to sub to the channel. Also, check out our Patreon community. Really, really cool stuff going on over there. You get early access to everything. And it's the best way to support what we do here at Packers Total Access. Patreon.com/Packer Fan Total Access, or scan the QR code in the upper right. Also, do not forget about our giveaway here as we get the Mac and Cheese podcast in the house. My Autism Connection supports you guys. We can't wait to see your reaction for the surprises. So they're sending us some surprises over from the Mac Foundation, which is really cool. And just wanted to point this out, that we're doing a giveaway attached to that. If you go to my Twitter handle @Packers_access and you click on the link provided there, givebutter.com/KRPSJ5, you're going to notice that we have a little giveaway going on there where for anyone who donates to an awesome cause there with Mac, that's going to a great cause, and I'm donating a Dorsey Levens autographed jersey, Packers jersey. So if you donate, you get entered into that contest. We're going to put everybody's name on the wheel, spin that sucker, and give away an awesome piece of memorabilia from one of my all-time favorite Green Bay Packers in Dorsey Levens. So again, make sure you check out My Autism Connection. Really, really cool program there for adults with autism. So appreciate them. All right, everybody have a great night. Appreciate y'all. Hit that like button on the way out. Austin Hardy with the super chat. This team's 2024-2025 season is Eagles 23-24. I love the way you're thinking there, Austin. Love it, man. Because again, last year, Jacob, everybody was writing Philadelphia Eagles off, man. They were. It was literally the first quarter of the season. They were calling to fire Nick Sirianni. Now the dude just got a huge contract extension, and obviously is he's at the top of the NFL mountain right now. So funny how winning solves everything. So thank you for that, Austin. We appreciate the dono there, buddy. Everybody have a great night. As always, let's go out and be the change we want to see in the world. Go Pack.
And we go. We're out. Bye, guys.